Hi, I'm Chike Coleman. That's Chuck of the Illinois Times. This is Real Reviews, the Cinematic Underground, the show where we talk about movies. This week we'll be talking about 3 movies this week, and it will be Fantastic Four Stick, The Man from U.N.C.L.E, and The End of the Tour. Chuck, it's been a while since we've been able to do a show. We had another little break there in between.
Mm-hmm.
How was it for you?
Fine. Had a lot to do, kept busy, but yeah, everything's good.
Yeah, everything's good with me too. I'm glad that we're back. So, first movie I really wanted to talk about because I saw it and I was like, this is going to be a fun conversation, is the new film directed by Guy Ritchie, based off of the 60s spy television show The Man from U.N.C.L.E, titled The Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Mm-hmm.
It stars Armie Hammer, Alicia Vikander from
Ex Machina.
Ex Machina, and Superman himself, Henry Cavill, with appearances by Hugh Grant. And there's another guy that I wanted to mention that I can't remember. But the plot stems from a guy named Napoleon Solo, who is a thief of sorts, who gets recruited to essentially work with Alicia Vikander's character because she is a mechanic and the daughter of, I want to get this right, is it a nuclear scientist, is that right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And the plot basically stems from them, from Alicia Vikander's character rescuing her father, who is captured by, and I couldn't understand, it's KGB, is that right?
Yeah.
Russian KGB. And basically what happens is Napoleon Solo has to ally himself with this, I can't speak now, Russian spy, and I forget the guy's name because it's so hard to say.
Ilya Yanovich.
Ilya Yanovich.
Uh-huh.
And basically from there they go on a series of missions to try and stop this husband-wife duo who want Alicia Vikander's character's father to help them build a nuclear
Bomb.
Yeah, I'm freezing today. I don't know why. And from there, you just watch them go on these missions. And I don't usually like Guy Ritchie films. I say that in earnest. I don't usually like it because I feel it's all style and no substance. Here, though, I found Napoleon Solo to be a palatable character, kind of like George Clooney in Ocean's 11, mixed with a little bit of just crassness. He kind of thinks he's better than everybody else, or he kind of thinks he's got the upper hand, but he doesn't. And Armie Hammer, to me, is the shining part of this film that just makes it work. Because his banter with Alicia Vikander and Henry Cavill is where all the comedy comes in. And the action scenes, well, there are 3 or so, are well shot, but again, it's that old quick cam, kind of quick movement for the action scenes rather than fluidity, as I tend to enjoy. I feel like the chemistry between all 3 leads is very solid. I feel like the story here makes sense. And there's a nice little subplot about a watch involving, you said Ilya?
Mm-hmm.
And Henry Cavill's character. They have a weird little playful bromance almost, but it's a I don't know how to say it, a dislikable bromance, because they kind of can't stand each other. They're kind of after their own means, really, a bit. And it's interesting to see that play out. And there's a nice little neat twist at the end, actually 2 twists if you really think about it, that I really enjoyed. So I really ended up liking this movie a lot more than I expected to. What did you think of The Man from U.N.C.L.E?
I was surprised with it too. I was pleasantly surprised with it. I think that the relationship they have, an antagonistic chemistry, is very good. You have to remember this takes place during the Cold War. Both characters, one's a CIA agent, the other KGB. They've been brought up and brainwashed into thinking that the other is inherently bad. And so they have to get over that paranoia to see that they're both human beings and they both have, validity to what they're doing, and that they're both actually human beings. And that you see that those barriers between them slowly breaking down as the film goes on, culminating in this whole watch thing. Yeah, it's very well done, much more humorous than I thought. It reminded me of the first James Bond movies with Connery, before they got too elaborate and too out of control. The action made sense, it wasn't over the top. And I think that was kind of what Cavill was channeling there, what Connery was doing. And I really liked him here. Up until this point, I just thought he was something of a stiff.
Yeah.
Hasn't shown really much emotion in any of the roles he's had, but here he was very suave.
Charismatic, yeah.
Yeah, had charisma, and I enjoyed him a great deal. It's a shame that this isn't doing as well at the box office.
No, it's not. It's got like $34 million out of a $75 million budget, I think it was.
Yeah, because they've obviously have the intention of making this into a series, and I'd like to see another one. But I don't know if we're going to get that opportunity because people just aren't taking to this.
Yeah, and it's a pity because I have a favorite scene in the movie. It's very early on. They have just traveled to Rome, and the funny thing about Henry Cavill's character is that he just loves to step on Ilya's toes at any given point. He passes by Ilya, and it's actually a sweet scene between Vikander and Ilya before they're robbed that made me kind of fall in love with the film a bit, because you have Cavill giving this advice as Napoleon Solo, and Ilya's like, I'm just going to handle this with brute force no matter what comes my way. He's like, well, they're waiting for you down there. You've got to play that you're the architect rather than who you actually are, because if they snip that out, we're screwed. And I really love how that situation is handled, and Cavill's response to it once he knows what happened. And that's what that's sold me on the film, essentially. So I give it 4 out of 5 stars. Would you agree with that?
I give it 3.5 out of 4, yeah.
That's not bad, yeah. So we're on the same wavelength there. The next film, directed by Josh Trank, although I might as well put this in parentheses, directed by Josh Trank with studio intervention all over the place, is Fan-4stick, or as normal human people would call it, Fantastic Four. This is the latest attempt to reboot the Fantastic Four franchise and to give it some validity. Previous effort was directed by Tim Story. Previous to that was a really bad TV movie-looking thing by Roger Corman. This time around, we meet, where my brain?
Reed Richards.
Yes, Reed Richards and Ben Grimm as children, and Reed Richards is building a transportation device. And as a child, he gets it to work, but there are, little hiccups and problems from what he tries to transport. So now you flash forward 70 years, and Ben Grimm and Reed Richards are at a science fair. They do the teleportation device again, and it works, but no one in society understands what Reed Richards is trying to accomplish, except for Sue Storm's father, who then recruits him to go to university and basically work on making this teleportation device a go. We're also introduced to Johnny Storm, who in this film is a street racer played by Michael B. Jordan. Sue Storm, who is a brainiac, and you can tell there's a little bit of chemistry there, is played by the devilishly deceptive Kate Mara from House of Cards. And basically, those three spend a good amount of time building this transportation device until they actually do go over there. And of course, while they're over there with another character, Victor Von Doom, something goes wrong. You got the atmosphere that binds to them, and they each get powers from it. The military has always wanted to use this transportation device once they find out that these 4 people have powers to basically do another military-industrial complex and use their soldiers as super weapons against any known threat. Reed Richards and his crew don't like that idea, neither does Sue Storm's dad. They all say no. Um, in the process of being experimented on, Reed Richards escapes, and more time flashes past until he is forced to be reunited with the military. Um, Victor Von Doom, which I did not detail, is left on the planet when the initial uh, Big Bang, I'll call it, happens between the Fantastic Four. So they rediscover Victor Von Doom, and then Victor has his evil plot that he decides he wants to go through with, involving the transporter device that they've been using. And that's the movie. Why am I telling you all this plot details about this movie? Because I don't want you to see it. It's a horrible, god awful film. Not because of the casting. I think the casting is superb. I just feel like the story really doesn't have any progression. You're dragging the pace along, introducing us to these four people that we're supposed to care about, but you're not making a family atmosphere out of these four people that we're used to seeing bind together and bond together until the last 15 minutes of the film. Is that right?
It's about 20, 25, yeah.
Okay. So the reality is, it's not that the leads don't have chemistry when they're actually working together and talking to each other. They really do. The problem is there needs to be more substance there. And I have a feeling that director Trank would have created that substance had he been allowed to, and had there not been as many budgetary and script restrictions. Chuck, what did you think about Fantastic Four or Fan Four Stick?
It was awful. Yeah, it was one of the worst things I've seen this year. I don't think you can let Trank off the hook completely, though. Every single line of dialogue is spoken, very, very seriously and in the same tone by all four actors. And that's obviously something that's set by the director. And I'm not quite sure what direction he was headed in here. I don't know if he wanted to have an incredibly dark take on this story or what. But I think that's a mistake on his part. As you say, the pacing is awful. They don't get their powers until about 50 minutes into this film, and it's a 90-minute movie, so we're halfway gone before we even get to that point. The thing about the Fantastic Four is, if you know the comic book, you know that there's a sense of wonder about it, but there's also a sense of fun to it. There's always been a sense of fun in the book, and as bad as the other two films have been, at least Story attempted to get that, and at times got that a little bit.
Yeah.
This isn't fun at all. I mean, there's no attempt at that. This is a dour story and production from the very get-go, and that's a mistake. I liked Doom. I thought he was much better here than in the other productions I've seen, but still they screwed his character up at the end, giving him certain powers that really disturbed me in the way they used them, with the film becoming suddenly very graphically violent.
And Cronenberg-esque is what I thought to call it when I saw it.
Yeah, that was a little disturbing. Film has just no tone. As you say, it drags along. It is, if I were teaching a film class, I would show this as to how not to direct a movie. I mean, it is an embarrassment from every viewpoint.
And you know what I thought? I said to myself in a creative slump after watching this film, if I was going to redo the Fantastic Four myself, who would I put in the key roles? And I thought to myself, get Jennifer Lawrence, make her Sue Storm, get the kid from X-Men, Nicholas Hoult, get Jack O'Connell from Unbroken, and keep Michael B. Jordan in there as Johnny Storm, and replace Reggie Cathy, as a wonderful character actor as he is, with Jeffrey Wright, and make the planet they land on something really outlandish, and not just a desert planet that gave them powers, but something where there's a enemy bigger than Doom to face. And I don't know who I would recast as Doom, but the guy that they got, I didn't feel anything from. Maybe Mads Mikkelsen. Because then you could say, well, what if Doom is really the overseer of the project and he's not their same age, he's older? And then have like Galactus or somebody involved as the villain. That's what I thought when I was thinking of a Fantastic Four movie that would be great to watch. And while people aren't familiar with the villain Galactus, I feel like it would be an useful thing to introduce them to a character that would basically one-up them entirely. I don't
Well,
know.
but this film though shows how Marvel gets it all right. Marvel, when they make their films, they are very conscious of the casting. They're very conscious that the person who's in charge knows the comic, knows the properties, has the right tone. And they really haven't stumbled at all. Yes, some of the Marvel movies have been better than others, but it's all been of a piece. And I just wish that Kevin Feige, who's in charge of Marvel, had the rights to these characters, because then I'm pretty confident that one way or another it would be done right.
I mean, we've seen what can happen with something like Daredevil. I wouldn't mind seeing Fantastic Four as a TV series. I know you can do stuff on a larger scale as much as you could with the movie, but I feel like that would work as well. So I would say don't see this movie. I give it 1 star, but barely. I can't really recommend it at all.
Yeah.
Stay away from it at all costs.
Yep.
The next film that I want to talk about is The End of the Tour, which I'm going to let you take over the plot summation for, because I seem to be stumbling all over the place today.
End of the Tour is based on a true story about the author David Foster Wallace, who had a local connection. I know that he went to school here in Urbana, I believe in Champaign as well. He ended up teaching at a college level at ISU in Normal. He took the literary world by storm by writing a book called Infinite Jest, a massive novel that was surprisingly not only just a critical success, but also a popular one too. And it put him in the media spotlight where he was incredibly uncomfortable. The man was incredibly smart, but also suffered from depression, suffered from certain degrees of paranoia, and really basically was better off alone, and he knew this. The film takes place over the last 5 days of the book tour for Infinite Jest, in which he has agreed to do an interview with a writer by the name of David Lipsky, played by Jesse Eisenberg, that will be appearing in Rolling Stone magazine. So the movie is just about these last 5 days between Lipsky and Wallace and their conversations and how they get to know one another and how their perceptions of each other change over this time. Jason Segel from How I Met Your Mother plays Wallace, and it's a very intriguing movie. You would think that just 2 guys sitting around talking wouldn't be all that entertaining, but as is always the case, if you have a script that's very well written and you have actors willing to completely immerse themselves in the role, even a most mundane conversation is not boring.
Mm-hmm. I went to see this film at Ebertfest where it had its premiere. I was drawn by David Foster Wallace. I felt like he was a very polarizing and in some ways enigmatic figure. I felt like I was watching a man who knew a lot about the world, but he didn't want the world to know a lot about him, and that made it intriguing for me. I wanted to see what Lipsky could pull from an interview with him, and I was watching to see how Segel's version of Wallace reacted to things and reacted to moments in time where he met old friends and what that was like, where jealousy and anger come in, where happiness and joy come in. And those are the remarkable small touches to me that truly, really make a film, when you can see those emotions come to light and see the responses of not a guy playing a character, but a person. And that's what really drove me to like this film. Pardon me. The relationship between Lipsky and Wallace is a fun one in the beginning, and then later on in the film it gets strained, but they're always, in some sense, I believe, compassionate towards each other, willing to learn about each other and learn from each other, which is what makes this film, in my mind, such a success. Director James Ponsell does not waste his time with quick cuts. He does nice long takes so that we can get a full breath of whatever the conversation is. You have little small moments when you look at there's that closet full of Infinite Jest books that Lipsky just kind of fawns over because he reads the book and he knows how good it is, and he's just like, I can't believe that I'm here. He has a bit of a fanboy moment, those are small, interesting touches. The way Wallace is with his dogs is also unique and interesting, even though it only occurs for a small moment in time. All these little tiny personal touches to try and not define a man or define his character, but showcase what this person was like to be around and what a joyous spirit he was. I feel like the film succeeds on all levels regarding to that, and I don't know what would have made the film much more of a success than it already is, and I feel like it's a very well-deserved accolade that it's been receiving throughout award season so far, as early as film festival season has occurred, and that Jason Segel actually surprised me here, and that he does have dramatic chops, but he was able to stay within a comedic zone somewhat, which made Wallace all the more relatable. Chuck, what did you think of the film?
I like this film a great deal too, and Siegel is very good. But I think that this reminded me of a couple other things. One of them was Rain Man, in that Hoffman in that film got all the accolades, won all the awards and everything. But really, when you go back and look at Rain Man, Tom Cruise is the key to that film because his character actually has a emotional arc through it. And here I felt the same way. Not that Siegel is one note as Wallace, but I think the character of Lipsky goes through more of a change. And Eisenberg really has to do, I think, more on screen than the other actor does. And I think he's being overshadowed and overlooked here. The movie reminded me also of Amadeus, in which you have the genius and the guy who is envious of him, in awe of him, as you say, and just doesn't know what to make of him, but knows that he wants to be like him. And of course that rears its ugly head as well. You're never quite sure how this whole piece with Rolling Stone is going to turn out either.
No.
As their 5 days progress and you see his perception, the writer's perception of Wallace change, you're wondering, wow, is this going to be a hatchet job all of a sudden? How is this whole thing going to work out?
Yeah.
But I loved how they all reconciled that final scene that they have in the driveway where Lipsky is leaving. You sense that there's some sort of peace that they have made with one another, but also that they understand each other a little bit more.
Yeah, you don't really feel like there's unfinished business there, and that's
Right.
I think what makes it so powerful is because they do come to an even truce.
Right. And this film is based on Lipsky's book that he wrote concerning this experience. So obviously a book that I need to get because certainly there's much more of the story than we get in a film. And I'd be curious to see what his perceptions were of, or I should say how his perceptions of him changed over the course of it. But a very good movie and very much worth checking out up at the Art Theater.
I would agree. The other thing I wanted to talk about is Netflix's Daredevil. I finally had a chance to finish it. You've gotten through some more episodes as well. Has your impressions of the television show changed? And if so, how?
Not really. I mean, it's been good throughout. I'm still struck by the violence of it.
Yeah.
And I'm not completely comfortable with it. But it's one of those shows where you get to, I get to like the characters a little bit more each episode. And also the bad ones hate a little bit more each episode, which is exactly what you want to do with an episodic show like this. Just kind of build on it steadily and leave you wanting more for the next season, which so far it has.
I would say, having finished more than you have in relation to Daredevil, it does get better. It does continue to build. And right now, you said you're at 7?
Yeah, I think I'm around about halfway through.
The crescendo builds in an incredible way that just makes you go, oh, why? And then you get to the end and you get to a moment where things just kind of, it's not a sudden end. It's a natural conclusion. But you're also wondering, well, where do they go from here? And that's what you want from a good television show. And I feel like Netflix's Daredevil is something that many broadcast television shows can learn from. I feel like The Flash achieves that well. There's a slow build there. Not the same case with, I think, Gotham or Arrow, But I want television shows to take a note from this. They need to have that good progression, that good pacing, that allows audiences after they finish an episode to just want more each week. I feel like every television show I've ever seen starts out with that ambition, and then somewhere along the way loses the plot. I don't know. What do you feel about this in terms? Because you've seen more than I have.
You see, recently there's been this whole notion of this, the sophomore slump or the second season slump. I think that The Sopranos had that. Certainly The Walking Dead had that. It's just a sense of momentum. And you have to wonder, what taking a break all of a sudden does to a production and to a cast. Suddenly you're rolling and then, let's take, maybe take 16, 12 weeks off before we start doing this again. I think you can tell where they are able to pick up on that vibe and where they haven't. So it's always a roll of the dice there with that second season for me. And we've got a lot of second seasons coming up of shows that we've liked here.
Yeah.
The Flash is coming up soon, as you say. Gotham is coming up soon. Their second season needs to resurrect that show. Another show I love, Last Man on Earth, second season is coming up soon.
Oh, I haven't seen that. Is that good?
Oh, it's hilarious. And I think there's only 10 episodes in the first season. You can catch up very quickly. So yeah, you're right. Daredevil season 2 is going to be a question, and I'm hoping they can beat that jinx. I know that they're bringing in another big villain.
Yes,
Bullseye.
Punisher.
Oh, Punisher. Yeah, the Punisher. So that should definitely make things interesting.
And I feel I want to touch on this real quick because I feel like the same can be said for movie sequels. I feel like movie sequels also go through a sophomore slump as well. I felt that way with earlier this year, Avengers: Age of Ultron.
I was going to say, I would say the exception would be the superhero sequels. And Avengers, I think, is an exception because it's a group film. But Spider-Man 2 was better than the first one.
Yeah.
Dark Knight was better than Batman. Some argue that Superman 2 was better than Superman. But I think that with the superhero films, once you get everything established, then you can hit the ground running on that second one, and maybe that helps. But
So-
other sequels, though, tend to,
Like Sherlock: Game of Shadows, I didn't like. Just spitballing here.
The good ones are the exception to the rule.
And like you said, with superhero films, you rarely can make a mistake. Like X2, X-Men United was fine.
It was better than the
But
first one.
you look at like Legally Blonde 2, that's a waste of space. Dumber and Dumber 2, that's a waste of space.
Yeah.
So I don't know how we would go above that plateau. As I guess what I'm
I think the difference is that with superhero films, are often planned as not just one movie. It's a continuous story. The movies you just mentioned were lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
Oh, we had a hit on our hands. It's one contained story. Ooh, how do we then follow it up? And it often becomes artificial. That, I think, is the difference.
Ooh, I think you have a very good point there. So that's something we'll have to watch for in the future. And the Oscar contenders this year, there might be some things we might like that are, sequels to original properties or whatnot. So we'll probably talk about that next week. Until then, I'm Chike Coleman, and my reviews can be found at thewheelchairwatcher.com. That's Chuck Kaplinski. He writes for the Illinois Times and the News Gazette. We will see you again next week. Bye, guys.